Newsroom. It's time for the France 24 debate. Syria warning of a surprise retaliation after Israeli jets reportedly bombed one, possibly two sites inside their country. The New York Times quotes sources as saying the jets targeted a convoy carrying sophisticated anti-aircraft weaponry on the outskirts of Damascus intended for Hezbollah. Russia, though, says it's condemning a separate attack on a military research center near Damascus. Israel itself tight-lipped this week's discovery of mass executions in Aleppo, a reminder of Syria's grisly spiral into a seeming abyss with the Israeli airstrikes. Is it also sealing its status as new proxy war ground for the wider Middle East? Today in the France 24 debate, Israel strikes. And with us to talk about it, Stephen Ekovich, professor of political science at the American University of Paris. We're joined from Washington by Walid Phares, who teaches at National Defense University. Welcome back to the debate, sir. And we'll be joined shortly by Hisham Jabarin of the in Beirut. He's at the Middle East Center for Studies and Public Relations. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Now, Syria. The latest news has summoned the UN representative to the Golan Heights to voice its anger and promised what it calls a surprise response. Channel 1 in Israel speculating on what happened, speculating since there's no official reaction, and, well, may never be one. Stephen Carroll has more.
An unprovoked violation. On state television, the Syrian regime slams Israel for carrying out an attack on its territory and threatens to retaliate. It accuses Israeli jets of bombarding a strategic research center a few kilometers away from Damascus. The allegations have sparked a wave of condemnation, namely from the Arab League, Iran and Russia.
If that accusation is confirmed, it means the strikes took place for no reason on a sovereign state. If that's the case, it would violate the UN Charter, and that would be unacceptable, whatever the reasons behind the raid.
There are also reports that Israel hit another target, a convoy carrying weapons to neighboring Lebanon, possibly destined to Hezbollah. The militia group denies this and denounced a, quote, Zionist aggression. But even if it were true, it wouldn't justify the attack, according to some experts.
In such a situation, Israel would have a right to defend itself, even to anticipate the use of such weaponry, but it would have to be very clear that it's going to be directed against Israel.
For now, Israeli authorities remain silent and haven't confirmed nor denied the strike. But they've often warned that they would prevent chemical weapons from falling into the hands of Hezbollah, one of Syria's and Iran's key ally. A few days ago, Israel boosted its defense system near its northern border.
And once again, Damascus warning of a surprise reprisal. Its ally, Iran, also hinting at retaliation. The Zionist regime's attack on the outskirts of Damascus will have grave consequences, says the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian. Walid Phares, first of all, what have you pieced together? Was it one attack? Was it several attacks? What do we know?
François, the Israelis are not talking, as usual. Whenever asked about these special missions, specifically when they target allegedly strategic type of weaponry that should be either missiles or non-conventional weaponry system, they stay silent. From what we get in Washington, which is already in the New York Times and other places, is that there were two targets. One is a fixed target that is a lab, a scientific lab, and the other one is a convoy with anti-aircraft missiles. But the bigger picture is that the Israelis are watching the traffic of arms from Syria, initially from Iran to Syria to Lebanon, regardless of the civil war in Syria. And if I may add quickly, this has something a little bit of surreal, because the reaction has been that this is an infringement of the Syrian sovereignty, which is true. While Syria is in a full-fledged civil war with probably 60 to 70,000 people killed, and who is not on Syrian soil? Hezbollah is on Syrian soil, and Iran is on Syrian soil. So this only complicates issues. If I may conclude, I think the Syrian regime will take advantage of that on the political level.
We'll take advantage of it on the political level. When you hear Damascus and Tehran warning of retaliation, is it serious?
I think that the most important advantage now for the Assad regime is in the messaging. He has been saying and arguing that he has been defending Syria against Israel. He has been the supplier of support to the resistance in Lebanon, that would be Hezbollah. And his opposition was accusing him of actually selling out. Now he's going to come, and we see it already in the media. He's going to come and say, see, the Israelis are targeting me. I am the good guy. I'm the patriots. And you, by opposing me, you are weakening Syria, and it will be to the advantage of Israel. I mean, it's going to be the narrative for the next few days. So politically speaking, he will use it. Will he actually use action directly against the Israelis? Less likely. Will other factions in the region, I'm thinking Hamas or Hezbollah or other factions, would enter the fray? Very possible, but that will have to be coordinated between Iranians and Syrians and Hezbollah.
All right, you mentioned how Assad might use it to his advantage. The opposition in Syria, the Syrian National Council, has been reacting as well this Thursday. And the attack by Israel drawing condemnation from both supporters and opponents of Assad. Take a listen.
We believe what Israeli did, it's illegal. Because, it is using, the sky of other country, which is illegal according to international community law. So it is not be accepted anyhow. But sorry to say, Bashar doesn't care about that this time. His aim these days just to stop the revolution there, to kill his people, not to protect his land or his sky.
Stephen Ekovich, and by the way, we can welcome Jenny DiGiovanni. Paris traffic could not stop her. Jenny DiGiovanni of Vanity Fair, and who contributes to many other publications. Thank you for being with us. Stephen Ekovich, your reaction there to what that SNC representative was saying?
Well, first of all, the Syrian National Committee is not legal either, for that matter. So there's in a situation like this in Syria, where there's a lot of turbulence and conflict, and there are so many parties from so many places. What we're hearing when we hear complaints about Israel is the usual slogans, the usual insults. The Israelis are an easy target. So there's nothing new in that sense. Even if Assad tries to draw some advantage from this, I don't think. Can we imagine it would go very far in any case? I think maybe the best assessment here was that it might, be to some advantage for him for 48 hours. That's probably an accurate assessment. The Israelis aren't taking sides. If they're going to strike something, they're doing it for their own national security. We don't know exactly what they hit and for what reason they think it was important for their national security, but it's difficult to imagine that the intervention was meant to take one side or the other to hasten the fall of the Assad regime.
Jenny Giovanni?
I just came back from Davos, where I saw a talk by Ayad Barak, and he was saying that, we live in a tough neighborhood. I think this is an absolute clear violation of sovereignty. I think that it's inflammatory. I think that it's once again an example of Israel doing whatever it wants in a very difficult situation, and it will get away with it. It will get away with it the same way it continues to build settlements and gets away with it. If any other country did that, acted unilaterally like that, probably with the consent of the United States, which the New York Times reported today, or they knew about it in advance, they would not be allowed to do it. And I think it's going to activate Hezbollah. I think it's a dreadful mistake on their part. And I think with the civil war raging in Syria right now, it was probably the worst thing they could possibly do to antagonize their neighbors. And I'm sorry, but I just don't buy this. It's for their own protection. They're always saying it's for their own protection, and they always inflame the situation.
Of course it is, and it frequently is for their own protection as well. And there are all kinds of legality, and there are all kinds of legitimacy.
But they violated sovereignty. That's against international law.
In this particular instance, there's all kinds of violations of sovereignty in Syria. And what I'm saying here is when the Israelis strike, it's not to take sides in this particular instance. They have their reasons for protecting themselves against, and we don't know what the targets were yet. We don't know how important they were. We don't know what kind of calculations the Israelis have made
know they
in
were
terms of
Russian
the political
surface-to-air
reaction, the diplomatic
missiles.
reaction compared to the value of the targets. So, until we actually know what those targets were and how important they were to the security of Israel, it's difficult to make an assessment.
But we know now that we know they were they were Russian-made weapons, and we know that Iran and Syria is now coming together in a very vocal way, and the rhetoric is getting stronger and stronger. Why would Israel do this?
They've been
in the middle of I mean, I've been in and out of Syria 5 times. I know what's going on there.
Yeah.
It is not the time to strike Syria. It was just an absolute shocking act. A unilateral act.
Once again, I'm going to hold my assessment until we know exactly what the nature of those targets were, and I think then we can make a better analysis and weigh the benefits and the negative sides of the Israeli strike as to whether or not the calculation was a good calculation on the part of the Israelis or not.
But they're not admitting anything as they usually
they never do.
You're saying the timing is awful. Why?
Because there is a war raging right now. The opposition has just said they're softening their approach to sitting down at the table and talking. Lakhdar Brahimi, the special envoy to the UN, is desperately trying to get diplomacy going again. It's been dead in the water. And I think in the middle of a civil conflict, yesterday we found out about the grave violation of human rights in Aleppo. Why on earth would Israel choose this moment to attack with Iran, especially angry, and Hezbollah on the march? I mean, it's just very bad calculation.
Walid Phares, do you agree? Oh, sorry, we seem to have lost Walid Phares. We do have, and I'll welcome him now, Hisham Jabarin, who is the former military governor of Beirut, who runs the Middle East Center for Studies and Public Relations. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Hisham, I just want to read to you some of the reactions in the Israeli press. And the Israeli press, clearly, with the focus that with this attack, their mind is not so much on Syria, but on your country, Lebanon. In Ma'ariv, first of all, well, here we can see the reaction from Boaz Bismuth in Yisrael Hayom. If Israel acted as foreign publications say, the ball is in Assad's court. The problem is that in the current situation, he has no court and does not have much to lose. A wounded lion is a dangerous lion. While we have in Alex Fishman writing in Yediot Aharonot saying, Israel is closer today to confrontation on the northern front more than it has been at any point since the Second Lebanon War. Must say, though, disagreement from Ma'ariv's Hamir Rappaport. He says an attack which did or did not take place will not lead to an immediate round of combat in the north. What's your prediction, Hisham Jabarin, in terms of what it's going to do as far as tension on the border between Israel and Lebanon?
Let me be brief and tell you the end of this, and to answer your question. If there is no war, real war between Syria and Israel, I don't think Hezbollah has any interest to launch its missiles against Israel. And also Israel doesn't have any interest now to start a war against Hezbollah and Lebanon. The problem is that this operation, this strike, has been made for political, domestic purposes in Israel, in my opinion. Why? The timing. Everybody knows that Israel has a bank of objectives, military objectives in Syria. Why now, and why this objective? In my opinion, Mr. Netanyahu came after the election, and he's going to have a new government. The creation of state of war, and let always the Israeli people to be united around the government. I think Mr. Netanyahu, who failed to make a military operation against Iran, and he made it clear yesterday, and he said we couldn't make any military operation against Iran, and we count on the United States. We counted, and we're still counting on America to solve the problem with Iran. Now I think its military limited operation has been made this time for this
for domestic consumption
political purposes.
No,
yes. Second, I think the most important thing now is if Syria will reply yes or no. I don't think Syria will reply. But if Syria will reply and launch missiles against Israel, I think Israel will reply. And this time we can talk about regional war, and we can say that Israel is really involved in a war against Syria. And this time I cannot guarantee that 60,000 missiles of Hezbollah in South Lebanon will remain silent. And second, if Hezbollah will be involved in this war, I think maybe Iran will be also involved. So we will be talking
so you'd see a domino effect.
About a regional, a very dangerous war. I don't think Syria has interest to do it now, nor Hezbollah, and I don't think Mr. Netanyahu also is ready, to
do that. Let's pick up on those points. Earlier in the week, Israel moving a battery of its new Iron Dome rocket defense system to the northern city of Haifa. Haifa, which was the target of Hezbollah rocket fire during this 2006 war with Lebanon. The Israeli army calls that move routine. And as we look at those images, Walid Phares, do you agree with Hisham Jabarin that the Israel strikes were for domestic purposes?
What I agree with Mr. Jabir is that Syria may not retaliate. This is too costly. Israel has no interest in a widening operation. And Hezbollah, as long as it has a status quo in the south, may not have an interest. I mean, this is one equation. Now, where I probably disagree is that the motive of this specific operation is purely political for two reasons. Reason number one, it means that other convoys have crossed before. And for political reasons, the Israelis did not, shoot them. And we know very well that the Israelis have an equation with Hezbollah that is completely independent from what's happening inside Syria. They don't want to get involved. Actually, they may like that the war would last longer. But you imagine it in two transparencies. One transparency, one map is the Syrian civil war. Another map is still on, that is Israel monitoring what kind of weapons will come to Hezbollah. Now, on the legal level, of course, Israeli going into Syrian airspace, it's illegal. But at the same time, weapons coming into Lebanon will be illegal in view of Resolution 1559. So both are doing illegal issues in an equation of confrontation. I think the Israelis made that decision to send a message to the Syrians, to Hezbollah, and to Iran that do not use the fact that there is a civil war in Syria to sneak weapons to Lebanon, because that would disturb the balance of power. I don't think Israel has an intention for a major campaign, and I don't think that Hezbollah and Iran and Syria at this point in time
a disagreement on that point. We're going to pick up on this when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate.